I hear what you're saying about those kind of pivotal moments when you're young, and kind of that cathartic, therapeutic process of being able to digest them in that way. Was there any, I know for me personally there was, and was there any kind of turning point where those little raps and scribbles turned into that therapeutic process for you guys?
Yeah. In particular, I wrote a poem called Knife Sentence, and that poem was a part of understanding an incident that happened with myself. I was a victim of knife crime. I got stabbed 7 times, and I felt it. I was young. I was 17. Really, I pushed it under the carpet. In fact, at the time, and I'm ashamed to say it, my mates were kind of like, yeah, battle scars, and the way how we dealt with it as males, the bravado that came with it. Well, actually, I was kind of really struggling, but you just put a kind of front on, and I kept that front for years. But I just had to go to a place where I needed to unpack that and look at it from a lens of someone that's matured and someone that needs to almost kind of take this little kind of time machine back to what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and maybe how I could have, maybe could have circumnavigated that. And so I felt that Knife Sentence for me was very definitely a turning point, a pivotal turning point. And it led to lots of things, actually, because police authorities and county councils reached out to me and said that you're demonstrating a deep understanding of serious youth violence and adverse childhood experiences and things like that. And so they would ask me to come and talk and, end up working with probation and county councils, schools, and so on and so forth. So I think that one in particular.
Wow.
I think for me, it was my mom. So my mom was a big creative, man. She loved the creative. She loved reading. So she kind of instilled that thing of, being able to communicate, convey things, being able to read and write, being able to sort of like, value books, And so I remember coming home from school from a young age, just going into my room and just journaling, not knowing what I was doing. But I was one of those kids who just liked my own space. Till this day, I like my own space and my own time. And reflect. So when I lost my mom at a young age, went through foster care. So for me, poetry became therapeutic. It became that thing where, I had to do it to kind of get my thoughts out. Because there's certain things you can't really convey, and you touched upon it as well. So you grow up in a certain area where you have to have a sense of bravado, you have to be tough. So if you're telling the man that you're writing poetry, it's a whole different ball game, a whole type of levels of bullying that's going to happen. Yeah. So for me, it was more so of, I'm going to do this in my own space, but it was stuff that I couldn't express audibly, I can write on paper, and then until I summoned the courage to express those things and recite those things. And I saw the power that it had when I went into schools and I was speaking to young people who come from the same circumstances as me. And, they had a thing of, oh man, if you could talk about your mental health, if you could talk about your situations, that's empowered me to do the same thing. And there was one particular occasion that really kind of transformed my way of viewing the arts just in general. Before it was, I want to make it, I want to use this thing to make it and do whatever it is. But then there was one situation where I was doing a poem in an assembly at school. And then when I finished, this 16-year-old boy came up to me and he was crying. And I was like, what's going on with this boy? What's happening? There was probably like 200, 300 kids in that same hall, and he was just crying and he's coming up to me. And I kind of put him to the side and I speak to him. I said, what's going on? What's wrong? And he just said to me, like, you know what? Like, I've had enough of life. Like, if I didn't hear from you today and your journey, like, I was going to go back home and kill myself. And for me, I saw the deepness of just words and the power that you have in your experiences and to share. So that moment kind of changed my way of thinking about this thing called art and poetry in general, more so than what it means to me is how can it impact the people that are going to hear it, the young person that needs to hear it, the young person I was destined to meet, them ones. So, yeah.